Hello, all. I am going to be talking about climate change in Oklahoma over the years, and just kind of what that looks like, what I found, what I thought was going to be true, what was true, and then things I didn't really realize were true. A little vague, but we'll get into it. So my hypothesis was that if average annual temperatures in Oklahoma have gradually increased, along with precipitation gradually decreasing over a 20-year period, and that vegetation growth had decreased where there once was abundance. This would further prove climate change. When I'm talking about vegetation, I'm talking about Oklahoma has a dry line. Used to be over by the panhandle, and now it's kind of moved towards the middle of the state. So that's just kind of showing where vegetation growth has slowly started creeping away from that western side into the eastern side. So this is just a table of contents of kind of like what we're going to be talking about. I just realized my picture is kind of over that. Sorry about that. But introduction. So why I chose the topic, research, what I have learned, challenges that I encountered while doing the research, and then my conclusion. So for my introduction, I'm just going to move this knot in the middle here. Sorry about that. So I chose the topic because, one, it just interests me. To find out if it's true that increased temperatures and decreased rainfall in Oklahoma has slowly warmed the state. I've lived in Oklahoma my whole life. I've lived here for 34 years, going on 35. And it seems like this is true. I have lived in the eastern part of Oklahoma my whole life, actually, too. I lived in Owasso up until last year, and for 34 years. And then for this year, I've been living in Skytook. I can't remember a time in my growing up that the temperature in the summer would reach over 100 degrees. But if it did, I never remember it being more than like just one unique day, something random happening. But now I feel like we see temperatures in the hundreds for more than a week. Like last summer, I feel like we had I think I want to say it was like a 10 or 12 day stretch of hundreds, or at least it felt like hundreds or something like that. And our ground was so cracked where we used to live, and it was really bad. This alone is something that at least gives me some kind of proof that the world is warming, as Oklahoma is more of a milder state when it comes to the changes in temperature. What I mean by that is that we usually only have a few hot days and cold nights, but now we're seeing a huge increase in temperature fluctuation. This seems like it's only been happening at this level for the last 20 or 30 years, but I do wonder if it's been happening for a longer period of time. Well, let me go. There you go. Sorry. All right. So some of the research, something that I found interesting was that temperatures in Oklahoma have risen by 0.6 degrees Fahrenheit since the beginning of the 20th century. There have been days in the past years that were hotter overall, reaching temperatures of 120 degrees in the year 1943, but the consecutiveness of the days that we have in the years that have followed is really the more worrisome part. Not only does it seem that Oklahoma is heating up, but there is proven evidence that the global temperatures are and will continue to increase as well. So that's what I was talking about with the whole, we had last summer that week to week and a half span of 100 or more days, like 100-degree days or more. I found that if I only looked at the data for the past 20 or 30 years, like I initially wanted to, on the rainfall and the temperature, I didn't see a very dramatic change. But then I took data as far back as I could find it on the Mesonet site, and I was able to see a trend line confirming some of what I believe to be true. And I'll show you guys those graphs here in a little bit and kind of talk about those. I also looked into the vegetation towards that west center part of the state, closest to that dry line that I was talking about. And as I could get, if there was any significant change that had occurred, and I looked to see if there was any significant change that occurred there. And again, I have a map that I did, a vegetation map in NDVI, that I'll show you guys that here in a little bit and talk about that. But I did see some research saying the line has moved about 140 miles since 1980, which is just crazy to me, meaning that it's moved from like that panhandle area over to the center part of the state, like I was talking about. And then looking at the maps that I did make for rainfall and temperature, you can see, and I'll show you that as well, where temperatures have increased and rainfall did kind of decrease in that 20-year period. Some of the challenges that I kind of had, like I said before, the one thing that I found challenging was I chose to pick the data from only a span of 20-year period. And to see any real change, I needed to do more than that. I ended up doing graphs for almost a full 100 years. Sorry about that. I've been sick. So if I cough, I'm sorry. 100 years in order to really use or really see if there's any change in that precipitation or temperature in Oklahoma. The other thing I found challenging, I just had a really hard time making these maps. I don't know why, but once I got it and it went smoothly. But I was also running into that it didn't reflect the data that I was looking for. So what I did is I added more elements to my research. So originally I was just going to do rainfall and the temperature, and then I added in the vegetation as well as the longer years. And so you can actually see on the maps they're more easy to understand. Oh, come on, I gotta get it to move. I don't want you. Technical difficulties here. There we go. So let's make sure. Okay, so this is the first map that I made. I just keep moving this picture around. I'm sorry, guys. And you can zoom in, but you'll see I have both. These are mesonet sites throughout the state of Oklahoma, and I have for April 1st, 2000. I chose that date just because usually it's kind of rainy. Usually it's warming up. It's a springtime date. I just feel like it's a good, like, if it's been raining, it's going to show during April or May. So April 1st, 2000, you can see where this is the temperature, right? So temperatures in the 30s, 40s, 50s, kind of lower temperatures, which is kind of what I was used to, I feel like, growing up. I was born in 89, so, this is my beginning of teenage years. So that's kind of what I expect for April, is like a cooler April, kind of getting into summer, so springtime. And then precipitation, you've got Panhandle always just never going to have really good numbers with precipitation. If you go to the center of the state, it's a little bit better. That's just in a day, so inches, so almost a full inch around the Oklahoma City, Stillwater area. About half an inch over here. So, precipitation's like, it's pretty decent. I mean, we're looking at half inch to an inch to maybe over an inch. That's just the day, like that's an average day precipitation. So then this is 2010, so this is 10 years later, and you can already see, looking at these temperatures, those were in the 30s before, now we're in the 60s, same exact date, 10 years later. So we got 60s and 70s that we're looking at now for our temperatures. Precipitation is absolutely none, basically, over here. A little lower here. We were in the 0.9, now we're at 0.8. A little lower, there's nothing really that has an inch on it. It's just all about half inch or less. There's like absolutely no rain in this area almost. So we can see that decrease in precipitation already and the increase on temperature here. And then we have, this is 2020, so this is another 10 years later, same day. Again, still no precipitation. Literally, you can see all the way, there's this line right here that just no precipitation at all. 60s, we are more in like 50s, 60s, maybe not 60s, 70s, so, but still higher than that original 30s, 40s, 50s from the year 2000. And precipitation is just like, it could have just been this day in particular, but I wanted to pick a day to see, average wise what it would be. And it doesn't look like there's any precipitation hardly at all. So precipitation has gone down again while temperatures have risen. Yes, they are maybe a little lower than in 2010, but compared to that 2000 map, they are higher by, again, it's still 30-degree difference over here in the Panhandle. Okay, this next map, again, let me move my picture. This is the vegetation map, or the NDVI map that I was talking about. So I did the Weatherford area because here's like a little subset map so you can see kind of what area I'm talking about. The original dry line, when you look from back, is around here. Now it's that, moved 140, 180 miles. So now it's looking like it's more in here. And you can kind of see that. So we're talking about this area right here. And if you look down here, it says the difference in NDVI. So we have, I really need this thing to stop popping up so you can actually see. But you can see where the lower here, so these lighter colors mean that vegetation has decreased, and the darker colors mean the vegetation has increased. So anything that's a lighter color, so all of these lighter colors, especially these really light, almost white greens in here, that all means that vegetation was there at one point in time in 1987. And then by 2023, like I said, this is as far back as I could go with this kind of information. But in 1987, there was vegetation here that is just completely gone now. And you can see where it has moved now to where it's just this part right here. So there is more vegetation in this area, but all of that vegetation that used to be on that western side, so on this little map, basically right in here and over, is all just gone. So you can kind of see that as a change as well, showing that, like we saw earlier, there's not a lot of precipitation in this area anymore. Temperatures were higher over here. And so, again, leading to less vegetation. These are the graphs I was talking about. Get out of the way. Okay. So this is an average yearly temp. And I did the Tulsa area so that we could kind of see. This is from, I think it was 1984, 1985 to 2023. But I really just wanted to emphasize this trend line. So you can actually see in the trend line where, at the very beginning I said that the statement of 0.6 degrees has changed since the 20th century. That's this trend right here. So we are increasing in temperature. And these are average yearly temperatures. So you can see that we had some really warm years at one point in time too. So I would say more warm years than cold years. So again, trend line is going up. Another proof for climate change there. This is the rainfall one. This is the one I was a little shocked by in a way, because I expected from, especially the maps that I already made for the state of Oklahoma, how we saw that precipitation go down. I honestly thought the precipitation would be going down, but you could actually see in this trend line right here that over the past 100 years or so, precipitation barely, just barely, is on an upward trend. If you look at the different, if you're looking at the different markers here, so your average rain for the year, you can see that a lot are on the lower side, but there are some really high ones. Like this one's just kind of an outlier out here. But that trend line is really what I'm focused on, and it is increasing. So hypothesis was a little bit off there. But in conclusion, I would say my hypothesis was correct. Temperatures have increased in Oklahoma. with two different ways of study to see that change, with being the climate and rainfall maps, along with the graph, the temperature graph. Rainfall has decreased. Looking at the specific day that I had chosen, so that April 1st date, we did see on those maps where in that 20-year period we were looking at a decrease in precipitation. But then looking at the 100-year graph, you can actually see where precipitation increased a little bit, which that's a little off of my own hypothesis. Vegetation is slowly moving out of the western side of the state, and the dry line is slowly moving eastward. I will say I was surprised not fully, or at the precipitation not fully decreasing on both my studies. But the different methods of research and visuals does show that climate change is occurring in Oklahoma, thus allowing for room to theorize that it is happening globally. I wanted to just kind of throw this quote out here. I love this quote. So Barack Obama, the world must come together to confront climate change. There is little scientific dispute that if we do nothing, we will face more drought, famine, and mass displacement that will fuel more conflict for decades. I just really like that quote, and I wanted to share that. And here are my citations. Thanks for watching, as Doc says.